The bitter wind howls across the frozen landscape as snow begins to fall heavily on the Eurasian steppe. Temperatures have dropped to -40 degrees Fahrenheit, and for the next 6 months, this land will be locked in winter's grip. A modern human would last perhaps only hours in these conditions without proper shelter and heating. 30,000 years ago, entire families not only survived, they thrived through winters like this, raising children and creating some of humanity's most sophisticated art. They had no permanent walls, no central heating, no insulated buildings. So how did our Paleolithic ancestors survive the harshest winters in human history? Popular image of early humans during ice ages often shows them huddling around fires at the mouths of caves. But that picture is incomplete. Archaeological evidence reveals that our ancestors developed winter survival technologies so effective, they enabled human expansion into the most challenging environments on Earth. From the mammoth bone houses of Ukraine to the snow caves of Siberia, Paleolithic peoples created winter shelters that would impress modern Arctic engineers. The story begins with a simple but revolutionary realization: when nature tries to kill you, you make nature work for you instead. This principle guided every aspect of Paleolithic winter shelter design, from material selection to construction techniques to heating systems. Rather than fighting against snow, wind, and cold, our ancestors learned to harness these forces for protection. Archaeological evidence for sophisticated winter shelters comes from sites across the northern regions where early humans pushed the boundaries of habitability. At Kostroma in Russia, dating back 800,000 years, researchers discovered remains of what may be humanity's first engineered cold weather housing. These early Arctic pioneers had excavated circular depressions up to 8 feet deep and 12 feet across, creating the foundations for semi-subterranean winter homes. The engineering principles behind these underground shelters were remarkably sophisticated. By digging below the frost line, early humans accessed the Earth's natural insulation properties. At depths of 6 to 8 feet, soil temperatures remain stable year-round, 20 to 30 degrees warmer than the surface air in winter. This wasn't accidental. Tool marks and soil analysis show that these depths were deliberately chosen for maximum thermal efficiency. But the real breakthrough came later with the development of composite insulation systems. At Dolni Vestonice in the Czech Republic, dating to 26,000 years ago, archaeologists uncovered evidence of winter shelters that used layered insulation techniques not seen again until modern times. The walls of these structures incorporated multiple layers, each serving a specific thermal function. The innermost layer consisted of carefully prepared animal hides for facing inward to trap warm air against the occupants' bodies. Outside this, a layer of dried grass and moss provided insulation and wicked away moisture, and the outermost layer, woven mats of reeds and bark, formed a wind-resistant barrier while allowing moisture to escape, preventing condensation that could freeze and compromise the shelter. The most famous examples of Paleolithic winter architecture come from the mammoth bone houses of Ukraine and Russia. At sites like Mezerich and Kostenki, dating between 25,000 and 15,000 years ago, researchers discovered remains of structures that represent some of the most sophisticated prehistoric architecture ever found. These weren't simple huts, they were engineered buildings. Designed specifically for extreme cold survival, the mammoth bone houses began with carefully planned foundations. Builders excavated circular or oval depressions 12 to 16 feet in diameter, designed to house extended families of 8 to 12 individuals. The excavated earth was piled around the perimeter to form protective berms, adding wind resistance and thermal mass. The framework used the massive bones of woolly mammoths. Skulls, some weighing over 200 pounds, served as foundation blocks. Curved tusks and long bones created dome-shaped frameworks, while hundreds of smaller bones filled gaps and reinforced the structure. Radiocarbon dating reveals that many of these bones came from long, dead mammoths. Builders were systematically collecting materials from bone yards rather than hunting specifically for construction. The coverings of these shelters revealed extraordinary textile innovation. Preserved organic remains show builders created composite walls using multiple animal hides. Thick mammoth hides formed the structural outer layer, sewn with sinew thread and bone needles. Inside, layers of wolf, fox, and hare pelts added insulation. The entire covering system was anchored with toggles and bindings, securing it against the harshest storms. Heating these massive shelters required advanced fire management. Archaeologists found evidence of multiple hearths designed to maximize heat distribution while minimizing fuel consumption. Central hearths provided the primary heat source, while smaller hearths around the perimeter created warm zones for cooking, tool-making, and daily life. Fuel management was equally impressive. In treeless steppe environments, wood was scarce. Instead, people used mammoth dung, dried grasses, and even bone as fuel. Chemical analysis of hearth residues shows these fuels were processed to maximize efficiency and heat output. But perhaps the most ingenious feature was ventilation. Without it, condensation from breath and cooking would freeze, making shelters uninhabitable. Archaeological evidence shows carefully designed airflow systems, small openings at ground level for fresh air, and larger vents near the top to release warm, moist air. These created convection currents, preserving heat while maintaining air quality. Some shelters even had adjustable flaps made of bone and hide, regulating airflow depending on weather conditions. The organization inside these shelters reveals fascinating insights into Paleolithic family life. Evidence suggests extended families shared these spaces, with specialized zones for sleeping, tool-making, and storage. Infants and the elderly were placed near the warmest spots around the central hearth. Tool-making areas were set near secondary fires for light and warmth. Food storage was another crucial innovation. In permafrost regions, underground chambers connected by short tunnels acted as natural freezers. These storage pits kept meat preserved all winter, accessible even during storms. Construction of such shelters required careful planning. Experimental archaeology suggests a mammoth bone house could take 2 to 3 weeks of work by a team of adults. This meant construction had to begin in late summer or early autumn. Long before winter made work impossible, maintenance was constant. Archaeological evidence shows occupants repaired and upgraded their shelters throughout winter. Broken bones were replaced, hides patched, insulation refreshed. This was proactive engineering, ensuring survival as conditions worsened. Psychological needs were also addressed. Living in enclosed spaces for months could damage mental health. So Paleolithic shelters often included areas for art and creative expression. Venus figurines, symbolic carvings, have been found within winter shelters, suggesting art was a vital part of survival. Portable decorated tools and objects reveal that long winters were also times of creativity and meaning. As winter ended, shelters were often dismantled. Valuable hides and tools were packed for migration. Bone frameworks were sometimes buried under earth and stones, preserved for reuse the following year. Experimental reconstructions show that mammoth bone houses could maintain interior temperatures 40 to 50 degrees warmer than outside air, using only modest fires. In fact, some performed as well as, or better than, modern Arctic shelters with industrial insulation. These survival techniques shaped human evolution. Mastery of winter living allowed humans to expand across northern Eurasia, unlocking new resources and hunting grounds, supporting larger populations, and driving cultural development. Composite material techniques used in shelters spread to clothing, tools, and hunting equipment. Insulation principles were applied to food storage and protective garments. The engineering mindset required for survival likely fueled the technological explosion of the Upper Paleolithic. Knowledge of these methods had to be passed down flawlessly. Mistakes meant death. This need for precise knowledge transmission may have driven the development of advanced teaching methods, traditions, and culture. Regional variations in shelter design show adaptation to specific environments. Arctic peoples built on permafrost. Steppe dwellers battled extreme winds. Mountain peoples designed avalanche-resistant structures. Forest edge communities integrated natural windbreaks into their shelters. With the end of the Ice Age, much of this knowledge was lost. As climates warmed and forests spread, extreme winter shelters became unnecessary, surviving only in Arctic traditions, yet their legacy endures. Modern Arctic engineers still study Paleolithic shelters for insight. Military survival training incorporates lessons from these ancient designs. Disaster relief agencies adapt these methods for emergency shelters in extreme environments. The story of Paleolithic winter survival is a testament to human adaptability and engineering brilliance. Faced with conditions that should have been impossible, our ancestors did not retreat. Instead, they engineered warmth, safety, and life itself in the coldest corners of Earth. When we examine their thermal engineering, their composite materials, their precise construction, and their deep environmental knowledge, we see not primitive cave dwellers, but accomplished Arctic engineers. Their innovations laid the groundwork for all cold weather technologies, and they proved one of humanity's greatest truths, that through ingenuity and cooperation, we can overcome even the most brutal challenges of nature. The next time you adjust your thermostat or check your home's insulation, remember, those principles were first mastered by families who faced Ice Age winters with nothing but stone tools and natural materials. And their legacy lives on every time we create warmth in the face of winter's challenge.